Alright, so Diablo's 4 launch is nearly upon us, and I am so happy, I am so thrilled to just waste my time, my life, my essence, my life essence into this beautiful, gorgeous, and amazing game that we are going to have right here with us. And in this video, I am going to guide you through which class is the best for you, but there's going to be a little bit of an extra. We have played all of the classes, we know what the classes are, what they do. I am going to give you a little bit of an overview as to what the classes do and what the subclasses for those classes do. Not all of them, but the ones that I have knowledge of. I did play all of the betas, I did level up to the maximum, all of the classes in all of the betas. That's how addicted I am to Diablo. I haven't been doing that much coverage for this game, but I have definitely been juicing the hell out of this thing. But I am also going to tell you what has changed, because we have Datamined information. I am not going to tell you, I am not going to read you. My initial thought was going to read you the entirety of the unofficial patch notes that they were datamined from the base game files. And I did, I actually did. I was rating every single buff and nerf and everything, and it ended up being a video of 1 hour. 1 entire hour. It would take 10 minutes to read throughout all of each and all one of the classes, so I'm not going to do that. I would very much appreciate a like and video on this video, because to avoid that and to not waste your time, I ended up writing the most important highlights and what are the builds that are going to be affected by all of these buffs and nerfs. But I am also going to leave the link to the unofficial patch notes for you to go and read your specific buff and nerfs of your specific class that you're thinking in getting. But since I do not want to waste your time, I am going to tell you a general overview of what builds are going to be affected by these changes and the final version, final build that is going to be launching for us. So without further ado, let's talk about the Barbarian first. The Barbarian is going to be your melee fighter, and leveling up this guy, it's I want to say that it is a little bit balanced. A lot of people were struggling with him, but I would say that he has just enough survivability to, if you micromanage and you move around, it's not just standing around in there and hoping that your hits aren't going to do anything for you, everything for you. That is not the case, although they did receive this kind of feedback, and the Barbarian did receive a flat 10% damage reduction at all times, as well as buffs to the survival skills that contribute here to the survival of the Barbarian. Do have in mind as well that the Barbarian is one of the strongest classes on the endgame. Purely because the Barbarian has the chance to have more legendaries on its belt. Since you can carry 4 weapons opposite to 1 or 2 that the rest of the classes are going to have, all of these weapons are going to be are going to contribute to the stats, the skills, the buffs that your character is going to have. And the reason for that being is that your skills are going to be allocated to those specific weapons. That's how the Barbarian works. So if you do not want to use a two-hander, it doesn't matter, you're still going to have it in there, and you're just going to use your one-hander stuff for your skills. So basically you allocate your weapons to the skills. That's how the Barbarian works. If you do not want to use the rest of the weapons, they are still going to be giving you stats and skills and whatnot. And I am pretty sure this has happened before, that on endgame it's going to be extremely powerful, because if you start farming for those extremely amazing legendaries and epic gear and armor sets that we have been promised, this guy is going to be very strong. And as a matter of fact, it was very strong once you manage to reach 20 and 25 respectively on the previous betas. This guy was a literal monster because of how much stats he would get from legendaries. So that is something to have in mind. Now, Double Swing, it received a Fury gain buff. That is a major buff, because more Fury leads you to have a little bit more damage. Now, there was a huge, massive nerf for the upheaval damage. The upheaval damage, it used to be a thing that you would build the skill for towards 80% damage. Basically, how upheaval works is that you use the rest of your skills, and then the rest of your skills are going to build the damage up to a final whopping 80% native flat damage to the skill. That was reduced to 30%. Yeah, that sucks. Each stack, which is a maximum of 10 stacks, would give you previously, prior to the patches, it would be 8% flat damage bonus. Now it's 30%, so it's a huge nerf to upheaval, and also a huge nerf to the builds that were using shouts. Lots of the shouts have been nerfed, and I'm actually quite a little bit bugged because the shouting barbarians, while they were strong and they were fun to use and they were amazing and they would contribute to the party if you're playing with friends, I do not believe that they were broken on itself, but most of the shouts have been nerfed. So if you were planning to making a shouting barbarian, then you might want to think again, because most of them have been nerfed to the ground. Yeah, real bad. But the one that received the most amazing nerf of them all, and I am pretty sure that people it's going to be let down by this one. It is a bummer. I did want to try this barbarian as well. The Thorns Barbarian, it used to be the easy mode of the game. If you build properly a Thorns Barbarian, you could basically just stand around in there walking and things would die around you. That is, of course, if you build properly, again, the build. But yeah, Thorns Barbarian, that is not going to be a thing anymore. I do not think that they are going to manage to, after these nerfs that it suffered, I do not think that it's going to be as amazing as it used to be. Now let's talk about the Druid. What is the Druid going to be? A Druid is going to be a blend between melee and spell. So if you're into that, then this is your class for you. The melee side of things, it's going to be just you shape-shifting into animals and dealing damage, but you also have the power of the elements that you can use at your advantage. That's one of the subclasses. And also, talk about this a little bit later, they did buff a little bit, not a little bit, quite a lot, the minion, the master of the animals, the master of beast kind of subclass that the druid would have. But the lucky hit chances for this guy have been nerfed, massively murdered all over the board. Let me tell you, just right out the back, the lucky hit chances for most of the classes, there were some little nerfs around here and there, but mostly they were just, everything was just nerfed to the ground when it came to lucky hit chance. So which would make the damage for everyone just go massively down because of that extra damage. Anyways, going back to the druid. The druid is going to be this beast, or either a summoner of the nature or a master of beasts. Another thing that this guy is going to have, and there was a huge nerf specifically with this guy, with the lucky hit chances of the spells, the skills that this guy has. And that is because this guy is specifically amazing at AoE damage. The AoE damage that this guy can dish out, it's amazing, it's gorgeous. And most likely the lucky hit chances that this guy suffered was mainly because if you do have AoE damage and you're dealing that much damage on a AoE area, that means that you're going to have more lucky hit chances triggering than the rest of the classes. Then again, this guy is going to struggle a little bit against single target enemies. But let's talk about the buffs and nerfs on itself. There is a change in spirit management. There's buffs and nerfs on all of this, and the mold skill has been buffed. Now, there is a huge nerf on the Lance Life. That was a massive nerf. It used to deal 112% damage, and that was reduced to 75% damage. So that is a bummer. Cyclone Armor received a major buff in damage, and also, like I was saying previously, the minion druids extremely massive buff. wolves. The wolves that you can summon now deal 110% damage. Dude, that's filthy. That's amazing. And ravens, they were increased from 80% damage, I believe, to 160% damage. That is a 200% damage extra when you think about it. They double the damage of the thing. And oh boy, I mean, if you were not planning on using your minions that much, your beasts that much, your wolves and ravens, now is your time to try and do so, because the damage these guys receive, they can make a build a very, very strong build thanks to this. And they also buffed all of the ultimates of the Druid on the cooldown. So yeah, all of the ultimates, all of them, the cooldowns were reduced. Let's talk about the sorcerers. We have 3 different kinds of sorcerers. We have the fire sorcerer, we have the frost sorcerer, and then we have the lightning sorcerer. They all were nerfed on one specific skill, and I think that this is one of the heaviest things that they nerfed out of these guys. Align the elements. What Align the Elements does is that so long as you are not damaged by anyone for 4 seconds, it used to be 4 seconds, you would receive a flat damage reduction for 50%. So as long as you're killing your stuff and enemies are not touching you and you're dealing your damage that well, you have that 50% damage reduction. It used to be 4 seconds. In 4 seconds, it's just a amazing window that you have not to receive damage. That was nerfed. You have to be now 14 seconds of not taking damage before this triggers, which makes it basically useless. 14 seconds of not taking damage in this game, dude, that is not humanly possible. That is not humanly possible. I think that they need to buff or balance this thing a little bit, because I do not believe that this was the right path to take in here. This, in history of Diablo, I think that this is one of the huge nerfs that you can see. It was very powerful, but I do not think that making useless it's a balance thing. But yeah, that's the thing. Now on Lightning Sorcerer, aside from the Lightning Chain nerf that it suffered, the damage of the class was improved. It received a flat damage buff. So let's talk about the classes before I talk about the buffs and nerfs. What the Lightning Sorcerer is going to be, it's going to be a in-between sorcerer between the Flame Sorcerer and the Cold Sorcerer. The Flame Sorcerer, it's going to be just all into damage. It lacks CC, it doesn't have that many debuffs to stun enemies, and it basically thrives while dealing damage. But it's difficult for the Fire Sorcerer to level up, because since you do not have ways of debuffing the enemy or stunning the enemies, you do not have control of the battlefield, you have to kill stuff as fast as possible. And we know how hideous the leveling on Diablo 4 is, because the enemies, they level up with you. And if you do not keep up with your gear, it doesn't matter that the Fire Sorcerer deals that much damage, because it's not going to keep up with the inability to trigger stuns on enemies. So I think also, do have in mind, if you manage to get to the end game, the Sorcerer on the opposite hand is going to be amazing, because once you manage to reach that laser beam damage, it is going to be one of the strongest sorcerers. Now on the other hand, the complete opposite, the Cold Sorcerer, it thrives on both damage and stunning the enemy, freezing the enemy, meaning that you freeze the entire battlefield and no one's going to deal damage to you because you deal so much damage. This is even true against frost-resistant enemies. And again, the Lightning Sorcerer, it's kind of an in-between thing. It deals decent damage and it deals decent stuns. So let's go back to the nerfs. They nerf again the Fire Sorcerer. I do not know why they did that. They flat damage nerf on the Hydras, but they did increase the flat damage for Flame Shield and Incinerate, flat damage again. But this came with a nerf on mana cost and lucky hit chance. And this is a major nerf when it comes to Elemental Dominance, because Elemental Dominance was nerfed as well, and this affects all of the Sorcerer's damage. What an Elemental Dominance does is that as soon as you have 50%, as long as you have 50% more of your mana, then you're going to deal that more damage. And if you're spending more mana, then that means that you're not going to deal that much damage. And if you do have in mind that elemental dominance on itself was nerfed, then yeah, this just it's terrible news for builds of fire sorcerers. And then Frost Sorcerer was very powerful, not gonna lie. This was hugely powerful and it didn't need a nerf because of how strong it was. The only buff that it received was a flat 25% damage on the ice shard. So, but in everything else, it was, not everything else, but most of it, it was nerfed, and I do not know how to feel about this. I do think that it needed balancing. But yeah, there were too many nerfs. I still think that this guy is going to be very, very amazing on the end game because of the it still has the ability to be able to deal enough damage while still maintaining control of the battlefield. Now Rogue has been nerfed both on the distance section of the Rogue and the melee section of the Rogue. What the Rogue is going to be, I think that it's one of the most versatile classes. The Rogue can basically do whatever you want for the Rogue to do. You can place traps, you can deal damage from a distance, you can be a ranger, you can be a melee assassin, you can have elements. Rogue has a huge mobility, it has huge CC potential, huge stun potential, so this is one of my favorite classes, one of the most versatile classes, because this guy is the jack of all trades. This guy can pretty much do everything. Now, they did nerf the Ranger Rogue. The penetrating shot was received a flat 50% nerf in damage. It used to deal 20% damage to the rest of the enemies that were affected. Now it's a 10%, and I say 50% because that 20% that it used to have, it's just extra damage that all of your skills would be doing to those enemies that were affected by penetrating shot. If you have into account that now it's just 10%, that is dividing your damage into 15%, into 50%. Aside from that, a lot of the skills from the basic skills or rangers, they were nerfed. So melee and ranger were tweaked a little bit, whereas the subterfuge rogues, they were buffed. All in all, they were buffed. So I think that people were not using subterfuge skills that much with rogue, that's why they buffed it. So if you're trying to do a little bit of an assassin, kind of stealthy build, then this is your time to shine because they were buffed in there. Also, all of the rogues passive have been buffed. Aside from precision imbuement, all of them have been buffed. And precision imbuement, it's actually a bummer because it makes elemental rogues quite useless, a little bit more, or at the very least you're going to have to be rotating them that much more. I think that people were just choosing one element and sticking with that thing instead of using the rest of the elements, because there was also a nerf on all of the imbuements. They all cost a extra 4 seconds cooldown. So for you to be able to properly be an elemental rogue, you would have to be rotating the cooldowns on the imbuements, but that also means that you are going to be taking away the slots for different skills that you would normally be using. So yeah, elemental rogues in here builds have also been nerfed as well. That is a bummer. Now, finally, everyone's favorite. I think that everyone's very familiar with what the Necromancer is going to do. The Necromancer is going to summon an army of the dead and is going to launch this army of the dead against its enemies. And since that is the case, it has always been one of the strongest classes in the entire Diablo video games universe franchise, and they keep nerfing this guy, but this guy keeps coming strong. So what this guy is going to do, again, deal damage from a distance while the minions do the rest of the heavy lifting for you. Right out of the back, they nerf exploding corpses even more, dude. They have in mind that they were already nerfed previously. Well, I guess they thought that wasn't enough. RIP to exploding corpses OP builds. Yeah, they were already nerfed, and they were nerfed back again. So I do not think that these guys are going to be that effective anymore. There's also a nerf on minions again, but they are not going to be as strong as they used to be. I'm sorry, they received a buff. It's just that they were too nerf on the previous nerf that they were just completely useless. They were just not. Nobody would use them anymore on the final beta that everyone tried, and they did receive the feedback, and they said, you know what, let's bring them back to on their feet back again. So they did. They buffed them, the minions, a little bit more. Then again, they are not going to be as strong as they were on the first beta that we tried them on, that we had them on. They are still going to die quite often, and what this means for your build, it doesn't mean that build is necessarily useless now from now moving forward. No, what that means is that you are going to have to do a little bit of more micromanaging. You're going to have to be a little bit more tactical about this stuff. Meaning, if you have corpses that are dying around you, you're going to have to heal them, you're going to have to manage them. Long gone are the days that you are going to be just standing in there and let the minions do the heavy lifting. Now you have to take care of them. They can still be quite effective, they can still be quite amazing, but you have to manage them. They are not going to be able to survive without you having to do micromanaging in this thing. So yeah. They also receive a 15% flat damage bonus on Bone Spear and Bone Splinter's basic attack for the Lord of Bones build for the Necromancer. It generates more essence but deal less damage. Then again, they did receive more damage on Bone Spear, so it is only natural that they have to decrease the damage somewhere. But also last minute news, and this was also Datamined even more recently than all of this stuff that I have been talking previously. The Golem active skill changed completely. It used to act as a tank, the active skill. It used to taunt the enemies, draw the attention of the enemies, and shield you from their damage. Now it deals damage. It's a DPS skill. It deals damage and it heals you back. And that is pretty much everything that you need to know about the classes to choose your very own class, and everything about buffs and nerfs and how those are going to affect the builds of those classes for you to choose which class are you going to have. It was a very long video nevertheless, but trust me, it would have been that much longer if I would be reading every single thing that they did on the classes, so it was heavy work. I hope that you would appreciate it. I'm just happy making these videos for you guys. If you like the content, so like and very super appreciate it. No, I told you today you're gorgeous and beautiful person. You're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Like the video, subscribe to the channel before you close the door. Now I'll be seeing you goddamn gorgeous and beautiful people in the next one. Have a beautiful day and goodbye.